Picture this scenario, because I guarantee it has happened to you in the last month. It is 5:30 p.m. on a Friday. You have just finished a grueling 45-hour work week. You're physically present in your car or sitting on the train, but your brain is completely fried. You're staring at the taillights in front of you, and the idea of standing over a stove to cook a nutritious meal seems about as appealing as climbing Mount Everest without oxygen. So, you do what millions of us do. You pull up a delivery app. You order Thai food, or a large pizza, or a couple of gourmet burgers. By the time you add the service fee, the delivery fee, and a tip to ensure the driver actually brings it to your door, that quick meal has cost you $45. You get home, you crack open a beer or pour a glass of wine to take the edge off the day, friction, and you sink into the couch to binge watch a show you don't even really like. You're just doing it to turn your brain off. You tell yourself, I earned this, I worked hard all week, I deserve this treat. But what if I told you that, mathematically, you didn't just spend $45? What if I told you that the pizza, the gas you burned idling in traffic, the dry-cleaned shirt you wore to the office, and the very stress that forced you to order that food in the first place are all hidden taxes? These are invisible levies reducing your take-home power by nearly 70%. You think you were selling your time for $30 an hour, but after we do the forensic accounting on your life, the math proves you might be working for less than $4 an hour. At Mastering Money and Wealth, we spend way too much time obsessing over the invisible equations that govern our lives, the ones that keep us running on hamster wheels that are moving just slightly faster than we can run. If you are someone who looks at your paycheck and wonders where it all goes, or if you feel like you are working harder in late 2025 than ever before, but your savings account remains stubbornly flat, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because today, we aren't talking about investing in stocks. We are talking about an accounting fraud, not one committed by a shadowy corporation, but one you are unknowingly committing against yourself every single time you accept a job offer based solely on the gross salary. We are going to calculate your real hourly wage. And I have to warn you, once you see this number, you will never look at a price tag the same way again. Here is the fundamental lie we are all sold from the moment we graduate. We are told that our value is defined by our annual salary. If you make $65,000 a year, that is roughly $31 an hour based on a standard work year. That sounds decent. It's respectable. It's enough to live on, theoretically. But in the business world, looking at revenue without looking at expenses is exactly how companies go bankrupt. If a bakery sells $1 million worth of bread but spends $1,001 on flour, electricity, and rent, that bakery is worth zero. It is a failing enterprise. Yet when it comes to our own labor, we only look at the revenue, the gross salary. We completely ignore the cost of goods sold, COGS. And in this equation, the good being sold is you. It is your life, your finite energy, and your health. The cost of selling yourself to an employer is astronomical, and most of us are operating at a razor-thin margin without even realizing it. To understand this, let's perform a brutal audit of a hypothetical average worker in this current economy. Let's call him David. David makes that respectable $31 an hour. But before that money even touches his bank account, the government takes its cut. Between federal income tax, state tax, and FICA, that $31 is instantly shaved down to about $24. That is the easy math. We all see that on our pay stubs. But now we have to subtract the work-related costs. These are the expenses David pays solely for the privilege of having his job. If he didn't have this specific 9 to 5, these costs would vanish. First, let's talk about the commute. The average American spends thousands of dollars a year on gas, car maintenance, and insurance, just to get to the building where they make the money. If David drives 30 minutes each way, that is 250 hours a year of wear and tear on a vehicle he basically only owns to get to work. He's paying for tires, oil changes, and depreciation. If he takes the train, it's the monthly pass and the Uber to the station. Let's conservatively say this costs him $4,000 a year in post-tax dollars. Then there is the cost of appearance. David can't roll out of bed and walk into a client meeting in his pajamas. He needs business casual clothes. He needs specific shoes. He needs dry cleaning for the blazers. He needs the haircuts and the grooming products required to maintain a professional image. This isn't clothing he wears for fun on the weekend. It's a uniform for the corporate theater. That is another $200 a year gone. Next, we look at the convenience tax. This is the silent killer of wealth. Because David is at the office or stuck in a cubicle from 9 to 5, he loses the ability to be self-sufficient. He buys lunch twice a week because he was too exhausted to meal prep on Sunday night. He buys a $5 coffee every afternoon because he needs a chemical intervention to survive the 2 p.m. budget meeting. He pays for a dog walker or after-school care because he is not home to be a presence in his own house. These are costs that are directly tethered to his employment. He is literally spending money so that he can be allowed to work. And then we reach the darkest category of all, decompression spending. This is the money David spends to numb the psychological toll of the job. It's the Friday night bar tab to forget the week. It's the impulsive Amazon purchases at 11 p.m. because he needs a hit of dopamine to counteract a day of being undervalued. It is the expensive, all-inclusive vacation he books because he is so desperate to escape his reality that he is willing to pay a premium for someone else to handle every detail of his existence for 7 days. It's the therapy bills to discuss work-induced anxiety. It is the money we spend to heal the damage the job inflicts on our psyche. When you add all these monetary costs up, the taxes, the commute, the wardrobe, the outsourced chores, the convenience food, but we're only halfway through the equation. Because your wage is a mathematical function, money divided by time. And just like we overestimate the money we make, we drastically underestimate the time we give away. HR tells David he works a 40-hour week. That is a corporate fiction. David wakes up at 6:30 a.m. to shower, shave, and iron that shirt. That is 30 minutes of daily labor performed for the benefit of the employer. He spends 30 minutes driving to work, often in high-stress traffic. That is unpaid labor. He takes an hour for lunch, which is technically off the clock. But he can't go home. He can't take a nap. He can't play with his kids or work on his own hobby. He is held captive by the proximity of the office. Then he spends 30 minutes driving home. When he finally walks through his front door, he doesn't immediately become David the human. He spends another 30 to 45 minutes decompressing, staring at a wall, venting to his partner about his boss, or checking one last email on his phone because the tether of the smartphone means the office never truly closes. All of this is shadow work. It is time that belongs to the job, is demanded by the job, but is never compensated by the job. If you add up the grooming, the commuting, the working lunches, and the evening recovery time, David isn't dedicating 40 hours a week to his employment. He is dedicating 55 or 60 hours. Now let's do the real math. The Mastering Money and Wealth Audit. We take that whittled-down net income of $35,000 and we divide it by the inflated true hours of nearly 3,000 hours a year. When you punch those numbers into a calculator, the $31 an hour evaporates. Suddenly, David is making $11 an hour. In some high-stress, high-cost-of-living scenarios, he is mathematically making less than the teenager flipping burgers down the street. Why? Because the teenager walks to work, wears a provided uniform, and the second they clock out, their mental labor ends. They leave the stress at the fry station. David, however, is paying a premium for a lifestyle he is too busy to enjoy. This is the work scam. You have been tricked into a high-churn, low-margin business model where you are the product and you are selling yourself at a loss. The reason we do this math isn't to leave you feeling depressed or defeated. It is to make you efficient. Once you know your real hourly wage, your entire view of consumerism shifts. This is a concept popularized by the groundbreaking book, Your Money or Your Life. And it is the ultimate antidote to being broke in a high-inflation world. Let's say you calculate your real hourly wage, and it turns out to be $10 an hour. After all those hidden taxes and time drains. Now, you walk into a store and see a new pair of designer shoes for $100. The price tag says $100, but your brain now has the software to translate that instantly. Those aren't $100 shoes. That is 10 hours of your life. That is 10 hours of sitting in gridlock traffic, 10 hours of answering passive-aggressive emails, and 10 hours of missing your family or your hobbies. Is that pair of shoes worth 10 hours of your literal existence? Suddenly, when the cost is measured in life energy rather than paper currency, The answer is almost always a resounding no. This math exposes the lethal trap of the golden handcuffs. We often chase promotions that offer a higher gross salary, but come with exponentially higher cost of goods sold. Imagine you get promoted to senior manager. They offer you a $10,000 a year raise. On paper, you're winning. But now you have to stay until 7 p.m. every night, so you're forced to order expensive takeout for dinner. You have to buy higher-end suits to look the part. You need a more expensive car because you're now expected to drive clients around. Most importantly, your stress levels skyrocket, so you find yourself booking a $5,000 emergency vacation just to prevent a total mental breakdown. If you do the forensic audit, you might find that your real hourly wage actually went down after the promotion. You are processing more total money through your bank account, but you are keeping less of it, and you are giving up significantly more of your finite life to get it. You've increased your revenue, but destroyed your profit margin. This is how people end up high earners, not rich yet. The classic Henry syndrome. They are running faster, but the wheel is spinning even faster than they are. There is also a hidden opportunity cost here that is, frankly, terrifying. When you spend your money on the costs of working, the commute, the convenience food, the decompression drinks, you aren't just losing that cash today. You are robbing your future self of the miracle of compound interest. Take that 5 daily coffee you buy because you are too exhausted from work to brew it at home. Over 30 years, if that same money were invested at a 7% return, society wants you to think, I make good money, so you keep signing the lease on the luxury apartment and financing the $800 a month SUV. This keeps you trapped in the cycle of needing the job to pay for the things you bought, only to tolerate the job. It is a closed-loop system designed to keep you productive for someone else's bottom line, while yours stays at zero. So, how do we break this equation? The answer is not necessarily to quit your job tomorrow and go live in a cabin. We have to be realistic. We have bills, families, and responsibilities. The solution is to ruthlessly optimize your real hourly wage. This becomes the new metric for your success, not your gross income, but your efficiency. Every time you reduce a work-related expense, you give yourself a raise. If you can negotiate working from home just 2 days a week, and you save 2 hours of commuting and $20 in gas and tolls, you haven't just saved money. You've reclaimed 2 hours of your life and increased your hourly value significantly. If you start meal prepping on Sundays, you are lowering your cost of goods sold. If you move closer to your workplace, even if the rent is slightly higher, the reduction in commute time and car maintenance might actually increase your real hourly rate by 20% or more. Every dollar of work expense you cut is a dollar of pure freedom. But the biggest shift you have to make is psychological. You have to start treating your labor like a business. A smart business owner doesn't just try to increase top-line revenue, they obsess over the margin. Your life is the business. Your margin is the time and money you have left over to actually be a human being. If you're making $100,000 a year, but spending $95,000 on the lifestyle required to keep that job and working 80 hours a week to sustain it, you are a failing business. You are Enron. You are a house of cards waiting for a single gust of wind to knock you over. But if you make $50,000 a year, spend only $20,000 because you've optimized your life, and work only 30 hours a week, you are a highly profitable, robust, and wealthy enterprise. You're winning the game that everyone else is losing. This brings us to the final piece of the equation. We've audited the money, and we've audited the time, but now we have to talk about the exit strategy. The reason we perform this brutal accounting at Mastering Money and Wealth is not to leave you feeling stuck. It's to provide the clarity needed to buy back your life. The biggest revelation most people have when they see their real hourly wage is the realization of the work-spend-work cycle. When your real wage is low, every consumer purchase becomes a massive drain on your remaining life energy. If you are mathematically making $8 an hour and you buy a $1,000 smartphone, you didn't just spend money, you spent 125 hours of your life. That is over 3 weeks of full-time labor just to own a piece of glass and plastic that will be obsolete in 2 years. When you see the world through this lens, the urge to keep up with the Joneses evaporates. You realize the Joneses are actually broke, They are just selling more of their life energy than you are to maintain a facade. To break the cycle, you need to focus on two specific areas: lowering the cost of working and reclaiming shadow time. First, look at your vampire expenses, those costs that exist only because of your job. Can you move to a capsule wardrobe to eliminate the need for constant new clothes? Can you switch to a more fuel-efficient vehicle, or better yet, e-bike to work if the distance allows? Every $100 a month you shave off your work expenses is the equivalent of a massive raise because it is tax-free money. If you are in a 30% tax bracket, saving $100 is like earning an extra $143 at your gross salary. This is the hidden leverage that most people ignore while they beg for a 3% annual raise that doesn't even cover inflation. Second, you must attack the shadow time. If you spend 45 minutes decompressing because your job is high stress, that is 45 minutes the company is stealing from your family. If you can find a job that pays 10% less but is 100% less stressful, you might find your real hourly wage actually goes up because you no longer spend money on retail therapy or time on mental recovery. You reclaim your evenings, your weekends, and your sanity. The ultimate goal of this forensic audit is to create a gap. The gap is the space between what you actually keep, your real net profit, and what you actually spend to live. In that gap is where your freedom lives. When you invest the surplus from that gap, you are buying future time. You are setting up a system where your money eventually earns more than your labor does. At that point, your real hourly wage becomes infinite because you are no longer trading your life energy for survival. I want you to sit down this weekend, not on Friday when you refried and vulnerable to delivery apps, but on Sunday when you're fresh. Run the numbers. Be honest about the gas, the coffee, the stress buying, and the unpaid hours of grooming and commuting. Divide your true net pay by your total committed hours. Write that number on a sticky note and put it on your credit card. The next time you're about to tap that card for something you don't need, look at that number. Ask yourself, is this worth 5 hours of my life? Is it worth 10? That friction is the most powerful budgeting tool ever invented. It stops the accounting fraud you've been committing against yourself. You aren't a human resource to be used up by a corporation until your margin is zero. You are a highly valuable enterprise. Start acting like a CEO who cares about the bottom line, which, in this case, is your happiness and your time. The system relies on your exhaustion. It thrives on your convenience spending. But once you see the invisible equations, the trap loses its power. You can't be tricked into selling your life at a discount once you know exactly what your time is worth. Audit your life, cut the vampire costs, and start building your path to freedom. If this deep dive into the real math of your paycheck changed the way you look at your job, share it with someone who needs a wake-up call. We are all in this race together, but we can only win if we stop running on the wrong track. Thanks for watching Mastering Money and Wealth, and I'll see you in the next one.